Drivers, start your engines!
This is Greg Creamer's Full Throttle, powered by Race for RP.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Full Throttle, powered by Race for RP. Time for another Speed Trap segment. We're always excited about these, and today we welcome in a very special guest. I'm your host, Greg Creamer, but joining me is Brendan Gaughan. And Brendan, of course, has had a tremendous amount of experience of NASCAR's division. I met you something on the order of 2 decades ago when we called off-road racing together. We've been both in the business for a while. Great to have you join us today. We're going to be focusing a little bit more than usual on NASCAR stuff. Couldn't think of somebody better, obviously, with all of your background and experience to be a part of it. So welcome for the first time to Full Throttle, Brendan.
Well, I appreciate it, Greg. You caught me on an interesting day right now. Just so everybody knows why I my face might look a little goofy. I've just been to the dentist today, and one side of my whole face right now is numb. So, but I appreciate you putting up with me and waiting to do it a little later in the afternoon. And it's great to talk to you again, man. It's been forever when we did the old what was it called back then? Even
I think it was Core.
What was that?
Off-road racing.
Was it Core?
Wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah,
it was the old Core
track,
off-road racing we did back in the day, and I appreciate you helping me cut my teeth on the whole calling races thing.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a great era, and I know you still do a lot of off-road racing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But just want to get your impressions. Obviously, the Daytona 500 just completed, and as always, it seems there's been a little bit of controversy, not the least of which was the finish. You know, they went into overtime. They made multiple attempts. So we applaud them for that. But then on that last lap, they had the wreck. It happened well clear of the start-finish line, and yet they didn't let them race around to the line. There are some who say that there's no question that Logano, the minute that the wreck happened, had his nose ahead. By the time NASCAR pulled the trigger for the caution, Stenhouse had got a push and got bumped into the lead and ended up getting the win. But Logano and nobody else really had an opportunity to race to the end.
I felt like we were just in the right place at the right times, and then, like you said, it was double overtime. We found ourselves towards the front, and then the last restart, we found ourselves in the lead. We had just enough fuel to make it all the way around. I got to do some drafting with one of my good buddies, Kyle Larson, right there at the end to get us to the lead, and then it was hold on and block everybody I could, coming back around for the checkered flag. And the caution came out. We were leading. The race was over, and then I didn't even get to do a burnout. Ran out of gas.
Why is that happening at this stage? I can see it if there's a wreck coming up to if the leaders have gone through, then there's a wreck before start finish or going into turn one where you'd be at serious speed, but it wasn't there. What was the thinking, first of all?
No, I'm on the other page as you are on this. I raced in the old days, Greg, when we used to race back to the caution. Back when the wreck was in turn 4 and we were in turn 1 and we had to drive all the way through that wreck. That was some of the scariest times. I've had some of the scariest moments of my life in those situations. But what NASCAR looks at, remember, every once in a while they do let the race run to the end. If the 25th and 28th place car wreck each other at Daytona and the track is clear, where there's nobody else coming through the field, then they do wait to throw that caution and let it go all the way to the end. In this case, you had the, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th place cars where the wreck started. It started right in front of the field. There's still 30 cars on that racetrack. I think there's still like 28, 30 cars still running. And you had the whole field that was going to try to race through that wreck at speed. I agree with the whole throw the caution. One, you got to get those guys where they don't have to feel like they have to race through that and live life dangerously. And two, you got to be able to roll the safety vehicles out there. The faster the vehicles can get there, the faster they can get to anybody that really does have a problem. And I think people have gotten accustomed to the fact that we've made racing so safe that they go, oh, everybody's fine in those race cars. Well, hey, listen, it's safer than it's ever been, which is great, which we all applaud. But it's still racing, and still people get hurt in these wrecks. So I'm on the side that says, you know what, I'd rather always err to the side of caution rather than the side of live life dangerously. So to me, it didn't bother me. And when they threw it, look, it's human, right? They got to say, right, can we get through it? Can they not? So you have a set of eyes that are watching this that go, God, we got to throw it. They're not
Yeah.
looking at the leader saying, and I know the conspiracy theorists. I know they wanted so-and-so to win. They wanted this or that to win. No.
I think this is the first time I led lap 200, so I wish it was 1998 rules. But no, it's just part of the course. Just used to it, and come down here every year to just find out when and where I'm going to crash and what lap I come out of the care center.
The person that's throwing that decision is not looking at who's in the lead at the time. Dale Jr.'s retired. They don't do that anymore. What they're doing now is they're looking at that going, can't. You like that one? You caught that one.
That's
It took
good.
you a little
That's
bit.
good.
But, they're looking at that and they're going, okay, we really got to throw the caution. They throw it, then they turn their head face back to the leader and go, what was happening? So I don't want a rule to change on that one. I think they've done a nice job. We do multiple attempts of Green-White-Checkered, not unlimited for it. And I agree with the non-unlimited. I used to race in the Truck Series back in the day when it was unlimited. Those of a certain age may remember the famous St. Louis race. We had a gateway race where I think we had 7 Green-White-Checkers in that race. It just became a contest of futility watching this happen.
Oh no, the 16 truck. This is Jack Sprague.
Problems flying out of the back of the 16 and into the wall. Jack Sprague goes. He broke.
And the caution comes out. That's going to put Bobby Hamilton right on Shane Meals' rear bumper for probably a green-white-checker.
Oh, caution flag.
Caution flag flies as we have problems in turn number 2. 1 and 2, it looks like Terry Cook having problems in the 10 as well as the 12 of Robert Huffman.
We did not get white flags, so we will have, maybe for the last time ever, a second green-white checker when this race restarts.
Oh, they're big.
They hit the wall.
No!
Bobby Hamilton up almost on 2 wheels and into the wall. The caution's going to fly again. Chad Chaffin will move into the top spot.
But we haven't got the white flag yet. We will have another green-white checker.
Whoa!
Oh, got another crash.
Here we go again.
Up on the side, that's the 14 of Rick Crawford sliding sideways down the backstretch.
Oh, Lord.
Unbelievable.
Andy Houston and Rick Crawford getting into it coming out of turn number 2, and now the safety crews will immediately get out and try to take care of the 14 of Rick Crawford.
Now what we're facing here is a decision. I mean, this is incredible. We cannot get the race finished.
David Starr in the Spears Manufacturing number 75 Chevrolet comes out and wins race number 2 of his career.
I don't like the ARCA theory where they will do a green and white flag at the same time. I don't like that one. I don't like the green-white at the same time. There's not real racing there. Then all you're doing is trying to bump and bang each other to the lead. So I think NASCAR's got a sweet spot. I kind of like their sweet spot on this one. And most people, Greg, know me. I'm not the guy that toots NASCAR's horn. I'm not the guy that plays party line and always roots for NASCAR. But in this case, I think they got kind of a good sweet spot for me, and I do like where they're at with it.
Well, and I think you brought up a good point because when I was watching it, my thought was really that wreck happened down the backstretch. It's like nobody's going to take the checker and then run into it. But you bring up a good point. Had that wreck happen in the last couple of rows, okay, maybe you let him go.
You let it go.
But since it was 3-4 rows back and there's a lot of cars coming into it, makes good sense to have to throw that checker. That's a very good point. You mentioned trucks. That's really where you sort of made your name initially, certainly in NASCAR. You had a lot of success, spent a lot of time there. And you also mentioned the conspiracy theorists. And I'm going to tie a couple of things together here because for a long time now, there have been people who say, well, trucks was simply a sort of an afterthought in a way to create something to get Craftsman money into the NASCAR coffers. Others would say, no, it was darn fine racing. And I tend to think it was pretty good racing in the day. But my question is, it seems to have gone a bit quiet now in terms of what NASCAR is doing to promote it. Has its day come and gone? Or is there still good stuff to be had from trucks? And if so, why isn't NASCAR pumping it a little bit more to the public?
I definitely don't think its time has come and gone. The reason it started, I was there when it started.
He could have played baseball. He could have played possibly professional basketball. He chose to go to NASCAR and become a Winston West Series champion, not once but twice. His dream was to move up into NASCAR's Craftsman Truck Series. And now The Napa Auto Parts Dodge is a half a turn away from going to victory lane. Here he comes out of turn 4. 26-year-old Brendan Gaughan will win at Texas Motor Speedway.
Good job, Brendan. Good job, all you guys. Way to work hard. Pays off.
It was Scoop Vessels. It was Walker Evans. It was Jim Venable. It was these guys. They went in, had this great idea for trucks. They sold the idea to Bill France. They had the winter heats back in Tucson back in the day. You had the California Super Truck Series, which was the precursor to the NASCAR Truck Series. And really it was these off-roaders had this idea. They sold it to Mr. France, and then the manufacturers went, oh, wait a second, this is great. I mean, what's the number one selling brand of vehicles in America? They're small, light trucks. So it was a deal of, it wasn't trying to sell Craftsman. It was, hey, here's a way to sell more trucks on the road. I mean, that's the number one selling car in America is a truck. So that's how it started. Craftsman became, I equate Craftsman to the Winston era. Greg, you and I are old enough to remember the Winston era. Best sponsor you could have.
Yep.
When the Craftsman Truck Series came out, I mean, Craftsman was the partner of partners. You know, it was a heyday for their tool company. It was a Sears brand. Anybody that was a mechanic back in the day, you know, knew Craftsman brand. It was quality. You could get, you know, break a tool, go take it into Sears. They give you a brand new one. You know, Snap-on and Craftsman, those were the two. And Craftsman went away, and you went through some changes. You know, you had the Camping World era, which became, you know, they changed names a couple times with it. I think what slowed the Truck Series, honestly, more than anything, Greg, was NASCAR. Once again, it's a human element, right? We are all human. This whole thing is run with people that make decisions. And in the last 4 years of NASCAR, you've had a brand new car that they have been planning. You know, we're in the second year of the new car. Well, they've been planning that car for over 4 years. They had the car that didn't work, right? The one that they did. And I think that put a lot of pressure on making sure that they got it right when they did it this time. So anytime those people now are going to focus on that. They're going to focus on getting the cup side right. And I think the other thing that's hurt it a little bit, you've lost a little bit of those. I should be retiring in the Truck Series, right? I should go back to the Truck Series and run for a bunch of years. Think of back in the day, we'd have Todd Bodine, who ended his Cup career, came down. Johnny Benson, Mike Skinner. You had these guys that were Cup guys that moved their way back to the Truck Series to run the end of their career out.
Yeah.
You don't get that anymore. When the guys are retired, when Rusty retired, he retired. When Tony retired, he retired. When Jimmy's not retired now. When Jeff Gordon retired, he retired. You didn't get these guys to try to come back and run a couple seasons in the Truck Series and teach the young kids a thing or two. You've lost that veteran. You've got Matt Crafton, who's been there, you know, forever, and is kind of the you know, old wise man of the Truck Series now. But you didn't get all those names come down to retire in the Truck Series, and I think that's what hurt it. That combined with NASCAR was focused on this new car so much that they had to spend some time. But I think now that we have Craftsman back in the foray, I think that will probably help us a little bit. And I hope to get the Truck Series back because I love the Truck Series, man. Some of the best racing in our sport has come from the Truck Series for decades.
Without question. And so more just a scenario of getting caught in some bad timing coincidences.
That's my opinion, my personal opinion.
Which makes sense. And you're right. I mean, one of the things that was great about those trucks were just bricks aerodynamically. So they'd punch a huge hole. And so you could get drafts off them, side drafts, the whole thing. It was absolutely spectacular. So that's great.
Listen, I remember 2003. Well, a fun story about the brick. In 2003, they came down to us and said, listen, you all are going too fast at Daytona. They told us to slow down, and they were going to slow us down. I'll never forget it. But, you know, you can sucker a lap at Daytona. You can find that sucker hole, and you can, you know, I'll never forget they told us slow down or we're in trouble. And the Roush guys, it was Nathan Haslew, Chuck Hosfeld, and John Wood. The three of them tag teamed up. The three trucks got together, nose to tail, and they got to the line behind a big draft of cars in practice, and they took off. And I'll never forget it. Shane Wilson, my crew chief, called me. They were 10, 12 car lengths behind the pack. The three went bumper to bumper. They made it all the way to the pack, made it through like 8 rows of this 2x2 draft in the happy hour practice. Shane said the time popped up and it was like 213 miles an hour. That's what they did in the truck. And Shane said the screen went blank. They shut off timing and scoring. They red flag practice, and they took one whole air snorkel away from us.
So you're saying after that lap and they saw those speeds and times, they decided to, at that point, have you run the whole race through a straw instead of a bunch of straws?
Yeah, they took away one of our straws. We had 2 straws. They took one away.
You know, one thing I miss, and this goes back to us being the old guys, when I started announcing in Trans Am, late 80s and that, up until the mid 90s, I mean, that was 900 horsepower, not enough tire, no real aero, and world-class wheelmen. I mean, to me, that era was probably, Trans Am was the best sports car racing on the planet at that time. And I miss that. I miss that low grip, high power, let the drivers drive the cars.
Tom Gloy and I used to teach at Bondurant, was teaching those things. It was absolutely that your name in the heyday of the Trans Am series. I mean, those things were just phenomenal back in the day. And other forms of racing, I think the short course, we talked about short course off-road. You and I have the experience there. They've once again screwed their deal up where they've split series and they can't, nobody will get along with each other, and promoters, their egos get in the way. And the off-road desert community out west has done the same thing. Everybody's egos get in their way, and everybody wants to be, they've fractured all those series. And the birth of side-by-sides has really made off-road racing so much more accessible and affordable for every guy. And now you've got so many little bitty series sprinkled all over, nobody knows where to go race anymore. So it bums me out watching the desert fall apart again. That's kind of been a bummer. But in the end, I think that we have some really good things coming on IndyCar side. I think we've got some really good things coming on in the NASCAR side is still looking great. So I think that we still got great things coming, but certain places still got to figure their stuff out.
Well, absolutely. And racing has never been particularly cheap. But, even with the new ideas of GT3, where you don't have to take a car, do all kinds of R&D, throw money at it, to go racing, it's still a huge outlay for the original car. It's still big money for the, any spare parts. Racing continues to be awfully expensive. And that's a real obstacle because there's some amazing talent out there that just can't get any, forgive the pun, traction because they don't have the deep wallets.
Well, look, this has been a conversation since 1930, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what era you raced in. It always was an expensive sport of the day. And I've always had kind of a different approach to that one, Greg. Every time NASCAR, every time IndyCar, every time somebody in a sanctioning body says they're doing something to save me money. Yeah, that every time they do something that's a cost-saving measure, it just costs more money. And the other thing I say is if you're going to be in racing, guess what? Be ready to spend money. That's what you're going to do. When you go to race a car, when you go to be a big-time race car driver, a big-time team owner, well, I don't care if it's sports cars, if it's IndyCar, if it's NASCAR, if it's off-road. If you're going to race, it's going to cost you money. So, when people come up to me and say, man, I just can't believe I spent this much racing, then you came in with the wrong idea.
And it's funny, I've had people talk to me about, our race, our people that are, racing, are they really as committed as, say, a football athlete or a basketball athlete? And I just look at them and I go, really? Can you imagine Michael Jordan in the off season knocking on doors trying to raise 10 million so he could shoot hoops? No, that's what racing people do. It is a huge level of commitment because they've got to raise the funds to go racing. They don't just sign a contract to get paid. I know you're doing a lot of off-road racing south of the border, and you just explained why you don't do much in the U.S. because of all of the, as you said, egos and rules and all that. But are we going to see you doing any racing, back stateside here in the near future?
Well, unfortunately, my 10-year-old son is racing off-road. I'm hoping I can keep him just in the off-road, but I have a feeling that the chances of that are zero. I hopefully get back in some sports cars here, and then of course my off-road stuff, and anything I can do with Andy Lally, I'm going to find a way to do with Andy Lally because that is the man in American sports car racing.
Well, I'll tell you what, you get teamed up with him and John Potter in that racing organization. One thing you're going to do is win. Second thing you're going to do is have fun. So there's absolutely no question about that. So, hey, I can't thank you enough, Brendan, for coming on and being a part of this. Love your insights on so many things. Hope you'll be willing to do it again with us in the future.
Anytime, Mr. Kramer, you need it. And of course, behind the scenes, the old Ed Berliner, man. I've been doing stuff with Ed going back 20 years also. So honored to be here. Thank you guys for having me. Anytime you need me, you just shout, and I'll be there when I can.
That sounds great, man. Thanks again so very much. Really appreciate you coming on. And so, folks, as we wrap up this episode of Full Throttle powered by Race for RP, once again, we always make that argument and that plea to please go to raceforrp.org and polychondritis.org. Learn a little bit more about relapsing polychondritis, an awful autoimmune disorder, as well as other autoimmune disorders. See what you can, learn about it, and do what you can in helping to find, first of all, causes and eventually, hopefully, a cure for these absolutely debilitating diseases. And as always, thank you so very much for joining us here on Full Throttle, powered by Race for RP.